The University of Pretoria is gearing up to host the 2021 FNB Varsity Cup under strict Covid-19 regulations. For more on this, I'm joined by Xhantilomzi Nesi, the tournament director of the FNB Varsity Cup. Nesi, very good afternoon. Thank you kindly for speaking to us. Lots of excitement in the camp, I presume.
Thank you. I'm in Pretoria at the moment, and you can feel the buzzes in the air. People are excited. Varsity Cup is back after the year. And really are looking forward to this tournament. You know, university has been the breeding ground for South African, a lot of South African talent, and to see the next crop of talent coming in will be exciting.
Can we expect players to be at their best? Obviously, it's been 12 months since they last certainly played competitively.
We can. I think SA Rugby designed these protocols that would allow for player welfare to be looked after and for teams to be able to play rugby at a competitive level. So they designed these return-to-play protocols that were based on a 8-week program, 4 weeks non-contact, and 4 weeks gradual return to contact. And in speaking to the teams, and speaking to the players, and in speaking to the officials that have officiated some of the friendly chakas between these universities, it looks like we are in for a hell of a year. The players look very sharp. They're very keen to play. They've had a number of months of gymming, getting their bodies in the best shape. And I think it is a unique opportunity in that a number of players have never had this before, where you've got a year off rugby to get yourself in the best shape you can be in, to get rid of niggles, to get rid of old injuries that you normally can't. You don't have enough time in between seasons. It was a unique opportunity for them to get that right, and I think they're all gearing to play competitive rugby again.
Now, obviously, this tournament paves way for provincial rugby. So what does it actually mean to the players to be able to get back onto the field?
It's actually a brilliant question. It's something we as Varsity Cup, our mantra and what we live by is changing lives. So we've always believed we provide a platform for players to change their lives, and be that guys who get bursaries to come and play at university and therefore get a provincial contract thereafter. They get scouted, they get drafted into the Currie Cup team, and then into Super Rugby the following year, or to what will be the Rainbow Cup now, and obviously onto Springboks. So for us, it's exciting to create that platform where coaches will be able to see the best of South African rugby's next group of talented players coming up. And then also for players who don't go the rugby route to get a bursary to study at some of South Africa's best universities, and then go on to find a professional working career. It's a unique opportunity in that a player can do both things. You know, there's the academic requirements that you must meet to play in Varsity Cup, and there's also the opportunity to work with some of the best coaches. So you can either become a national, provincial, and national player, or you can get a bursary, study, and go on to work in a professional setup outside and develop a career in whatever you study there.
Now, I know for you as a rugby administrator, one of the things that's key is a pathway. So let's talk about many of these chaps that are playing, many of the guys that are playing rugby at university. As a percentage or as a number, how many of them will make it through to provincial or further?
Oof, that's a brilliant question. It's a big number. We developed a database after 2008. We only started about 2010 to actually look at the number of players that were coming through from Varsity Cup and on to higher honors. And I think that throughput rate started about 60% of the players who play Varsity Cup would go on in some shape or form to higher honors. So we had to make it to the Under-20 World Cup, to go on to Super Rugby, Currie Cup, and Springboks. So the throughput of Varsity Cup is actually remarkably high. We were worried at some point that players were going to academies rather than to universities, and that the talented players would go to the academies and not to university rugby. But we found after some years there was a shift where players and parents wanted players to have the background of academics to fall back on if the rugby thing didn't work out. So we started finding that some of the best players in the country were opting to go to university to get a degree, to get a diploma, or go on masters whilst playing rugby. So we are remarkably proud that the throughput of Varsity Cup to provincial or higher honors would hover around the 60-70% mark. And I think with the Rainbow Cup coming in, it's going to change the playing field for Varsity Cup. We'll have a number of European clubs starting to focus on South African rugby. They'll see that where is the breeding ground for all of this talent? How does South Africa churn out so many talented rugby players? We're already seeing in the English, in the Premier Leagues that side, and in the French leagues, a number of South African surnames you keep hearing of when they're playing. We think a number of those players are going to get scouted now to go play in the Italies of this world, to go play in Ireland, because there will be a platform for them to see that this is where these guys get developed. It's at university level that there's so much talent that they can recruit from. And hopefully one of the things we are looking at now is potentially playing against the European universities. So, universities Edinburgh, Dublin, and looking to do it as a cross-continental tournament with Europe and tied in with the Rainbow Cup.
So this Rainbow Cup is a great development. Tell us a little bit more how it's going to work.
So the Rainbow Cup is obviously under the custodianship of SA Rugby, working with the European unions, and they will play provincial games. Like I have seen some of the fixtures, but they'll have your Stormers, your Sharks, and your Bulls playing against teams in almost an extended format of the Pro 16. So what we believe what that has done now is shifted what most people couldn't watch a Super Rugby game between Crusaders in South Africa and the Sharks because of the time difference. Let's get to play so early in the morning that it had to be a real rugby fan waking up at 5:45 to watch the game live. Most people were just catching the highlights. So whilst it was great for the quality of the rugby, us playing against a country as talented as New Zealand, in terms of viewership and generating interest around rugby, it was a bit of a challenge. Now playing with with our European counterparts, we in the same time zone. You now have a number of South Africans who live that side. You have interest in them wanting to see World Cup champions. What are their teams like? Where do these players play? Where do their provinces come from? And that's why you see all this private equity investment in places like the Sharks, where they know that the game is about to get bigger. There's going to be a greater interest. You're almost building a Champions League in this one zone of Africa and Europe. So we suspect that there'll be a sort of a fall down from that, and people will look at the top tier, and then they'll look at the development. Where do these players come from? How do we find these players and bring them to our provincial structures, to our union? And there'll be great commercial interest. You can only imagine a game where Stellenbosch, UCT play against Cambridge and Oxford. You know, the students want to travel to that. It will be completely sold out. It will be a party weekend. The students of those universities will want to go and visit each other, and you make that an annual fixture. So we believe there's some great opportunities for South African rugby and for Varsity Cup within that in the coming years. And this tournament is into that.
Well, that's an interesting as well as exciting picture that you portray about some of the top universities. But let's talk about development. I mean, you've talked about development from Europe downstream, where they come to South Africa and look for players. What about development that's happening here in South Africa, the smaller universities, potentially from the smaller provinces? What are we doing in that regard?
It's extremely exciting, you know, the Varsity Shield. And I'm glad you asked that question, because if I look at the Varsity Shield tournament, I've always said the biggest growth for Varsity Cup is in the Varsity Shield. If I look at the numbers, the student population numbers of those universities, the Walters, the University of Pretoria, UWC, they hold some of the biggest student populations in this country. And now we've added DUT to the mix. And what I found is when we put those games on television with SuperSport last year for the Shield, the viewership was incredible. A number of people who are keen rugby enthusiasts who hail from the Eastern Cape, who love to watch a Forte versus Walter Sisulu derby, could never find it. You could never watch it on any broadcast platform. And for the first time, we've started to put that competition on TV, and we've seen there's a massive appetite for it. And this year, we are broadcasting every single game of Varsity Cup and Varsity Shield. All 70 games will be available on broadcast. So it's an amazing achievement for the tournament. It's the first university sport in South Africa. But what that means is you've got now a group of players who people might not have necessarily seen before now playing on television. You've got universities like Rhodes that have strong alumni in business but could never put their money back into the university because they never saw the sport, they never knew that there was opportunities there. That will now be able to say, listen, we actually want Rhodes to go up to Varsity Cup. So what do we need to do to get Rhodes to Varsity Cup? And that's when you see the financial investment, where you can recruit more players, you can bring in coaches, you can give bursaries. And what that does is it allows a player who's from Port Elizabeth, any of these regions, who might not have got a look in at the big universities, can now get an opportunity to go study at Rhodes. Now you've given a family that might have never afforded tertiary education an opportunity for a player to get a bursary to a Rhodes. He gets spotted there, he goes to a provincial union, and that changes the entire life of that family. It takes one student to get that bursary, to finish that qualification, to get an open door, and all of a sudden that family's life is completely changed because they've got resources that they can plow back into the family. So it really excites me personally, coming from that region, to see the development that's happening there, to see the growth that's happening there, and that I think the growth of South African rugby, especially into different pockets of our population and diversifying what rugby is perceived as, I think it's exciting to see the numbers that are coming through and that rugby is actually reaching a far wider demographic than what sometimes is the perception around the sport.
Nesi, I'm super excited, probably almost as excited as you are. But let's talk about the tournament proper. When does it start? Frequency of the matches and so on.
Perfect. It is super exciting. The tournament starts this Sunday with two mouth-watering clashes: CUT versus UJ at 5 o'clock, with Wits versus Tax, the traditional Pretoria Joburg derby at 7 o'clock. I mean, that is one of the biggest games of the season. And then on Monday night, we've got the headline clash: Marties versus UT, the Old Cape derby. And the tournament is the first rugby bubble in the world where all teams are brought into one centralized venue to play out all of their matches. The games come thick and fast. We play Sunday, Monday, Thursday, then Sunday, and then the Varsity Cup. They know they're going to have to manage the load of the team, manage the load of the players. And the last your question earlier, these guys haven't played any rugby in a year. All of a sudden, you're playing 3 highly competitive games in a space of a week. So it is exciting, and we're doing a number of research on injury and illness, monitoring all of that to see can players take this load. But we needed to make sure we fit the tournament in before the students were into exams. So we had a short window between from the time the decision was taken to readjust the format to playing it between now and finishing before students were into exams. And that's what we've had to schedule the matches as they are. But I also think it's exciting for the viewer. You don't have to wait a whole week for the Varsity Cup. You now can tune in whilst you start your family lunch on Sunday, and at 5 o'clock when you start your dry fires, you now have the best of every tournament in the world to watch and to see it coming back. So the tournament is structured in a way that it will all be played at Pretoria between 3 venues: Tax, Beefield, and Loftus, and all of the matches people will be able to watch on SuperSport.
Nesi, thank you so much for your time and wish you all the best. Looks like it's going to be absolutely exciting.